Alright, my gung-ho space cowboys, pack your assless chaps and get some lube. It's time to interact your gun ports with some unfortunate pilot's thrusters. It's Brokeback Asteroid Field time. Basically a summary of open play from my perspective. However, I still absolutely love combat and tend to do it the most when I just want to play. So for today, I got a few tips for you combat newbies and maybe some experts out there too. Starting with... do not do assassination missions. Back in the day, these were the stupidest things imaginable. You had a target that you were to kill, obviously, but the target, the game would only spawn in between the times of the next hour in the time window of a half an hour. Do you know how stupid that was? See, you can't properly predict what enemy you will be facing. Sometimes it's a small ship, other times it's a large one with engineered weapons and two other fuckers in a similar ship in its wing. Yeah, in that case, get bent and thrusted hard, cowboy man. The mission also does not pay any good, which makes it further not worth your time. Unlike some other counters that I'll be talking about later. But sure, if you want to try it just to try your luck and skill, sure, go. But don't do it for profits. Now, once in a while I get a question. Wow, what about the good build for PVE? Well, those that don't know, that's fighting bots. Well, my answer broadly is this. Pick any weapon that has no ammo, a weapon that can shoot forever without the need to go back to the station to resupply, then pick very tough shield, and unless you're facing engineered NPCs, which mostly are a waste of time as well, no need to pick hull. Just tough shields and laser weapons, that's basically it. Now of course, hull should not be ignored, but pro-level PvE does not need this thing called Viagra to pleasure the ladies, as they say. As for PvP, well, due to how extremely powerful and insane the shields can be, as well as how other few things in engineering can be, Elite Dangerous meta PvP build has stagnated so hard that if you pick anything that is not a third lance or a cutter, you are a world-class idiot. Coincidentally, Yamix is running his Python all the time in PvP streams. But hey, my excuse is that I hate this boring PvP meta and how commonplace they have become. Funny thing is, if you're not using any of those two ships, you basically stand out. Well, maybe sometimes not for the right reason, but still. And speaking of ships, unfortunately, Elite's meta is such that small ships are completely useless. Unless you're a superior pilot by a large margin, you won't ever win a fight against an opponent in a medium or a large ship. In fact, a small ship's best opponent is a large one, as you counter their firepower with maneuverability. However, it's still not enough against a capable pilot. And that makes me quite sad. I wish ships would play this rock, paper, scissors between each classes, but nope. Okay, so I did mention a meta and all that jargon. Well, here's another one. Shields are OP. Like properly OP. And not running them on every ship you have is tantamount to sawing your own leg off. Thing is, shields prevent module damage from all but one specific weapon, which no one ever uses. And you see, if your modules are exposed, i.e. your shields are run out or you just don't equip them, your opponent can just snipe the modules off. And do you know how devastating a non-targeted missile strike is? Well, a full magazine of even 6 missiles will certainly disable a utility item like a shield booster or chaff, and additionally damage weapons so heavily that they will almost certainly start malfunctioning. After the second salvo, at least one weapon is dead, rest is suffering big issues, and even internal modules are enjoying what is basically known to as frag grenade explosion in the crotch. And that's not the only reason that shields are mandatory, but it's also the fact that it's a regenerative health that in fact can increase your overall ship health to anywhere from 80 to 150%. And all that thanks to how OP the shield booster upgrades are. So, always run a shield on your ship. And speaking of shields, there are, generally speaking, 3 approaches to shields. Resistance build, where you basically max out each damage type resistance instead of capacity. The raw capacity build, that basically ignores all resistances and goes for the, well, capacity. And the balanced build, which is basically in between. Now, the in-between is the best one. Closely, and I mean very closely, followed by the capacity build. Well, notably worse and horribly suffering are the resistance builds. The thing is, while resistances are limited in Elite Dangerous, the capacity is not. So it's clearly skewed towards the capacity, and the balanced build is just a few resist boosters thrown in for good measure. Now, okay, yes, the quick charge builds are interesting, but they consume a lot of power from the distributor and thus require you to run energy-efficient weapons, most of the time kinetic ones, limiting your versatility. Oh, and speaking of engineering, do you want to see how badly it has unbalanced the game? Well, look! This is one healing beam, level 1 efficient mind you, versus 6 same size unengineered beams. This tells you a lot already, but let's say if you're running a wing, I frankly would say go use Heelys, cause gankers sure hate when people use them. It's so funny to see the Care Bear reactions and hate messages. Still, the way this upgrade is just great for PvE co-op. Now then, let's remind folks, or at least teach in the first place, what the pips do. So, you can change the energy generation focus on 3 main factors of your ship. While the more pips in one category will generate more power on any of these, the systems, the more pips you have, the stronger the shields. So with 0 pips you have normal shield strength and it won't regenerate, mind you. While 1 and 2 pips are about the same but just with minimal extra strength, 3 pips is notably more strength and all 4 pips to systems will boost your shield strength to 2.5 times. Yes, 2.5 times the shield strength. The similar thing happens with engines too. The less pips you have, the slower turning and thrusting speeds, the more, the better. While weapon-wise it only affects the recharge. Sadly, it adds no more modifiers anywhere else. However, the lower the energy on your weapons, the more heat each shot will generate. Maybe this is why you start overheating too much, because you're probably shooting at the lowest capacitor energy. So maybe try easing it up. Speaking of combat, depending on what kind of enemy you are fighting, the best pip management would always be to raise shield strength before you're getting hit, then pulling all your pips to weapons when you need to recharge them or open fire. And all other times just keep as many pips to maneuverability, that is engines, as possible to outmaneuver your enemy. This is a lot of work and not even macros can do it all. Still, learning to use the right pip combos for right situation is extremely important and takes a lot of practice. I personally use the Logitech G600 and my pips are bound to my thumb buttons, as you can see. I love it, however at this point I've struggled so much that some of the buttons have started giving up the ghost, so yeah, it's not easy. As for the last tip, well, if you want a very challenging fight where pips are important yet you don't want to do open PvP, well, Targoids are a wonderful substitute, sometimes even harder than PvP, but all the same, very cool part of the combat gameplay that I do recommend everyone. Killing the Cyclops is not that hard, especially now with the Guardian weapons. It's downright easy. So try it out and see how far you can go. And here's a little shout out to the wonderful folks at AXI Group who enjoy doing this very thing. I think they would be glad to teach the newbies how to achieve the Goid Killer status if you're up for it. Even I made a video on how to do it in a Sidewinder, so do check out that too. But as for now, well, that's about it. And though credit-wise, combat is not rewarding in the slightest, it's still my favorite and a thing you should try out. Get better and maybe one day spar with me in my open play streams or whatnot else. That or gank me, whichever one comes first. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, do share it around, and maybe if you got tips of your own, do share them down below. And while there, maybe consider becoming a patron too, or join as a YouTube member. All the links down below. And as for me, well, I'm off to engineer another trash ship that is not a Ferdilance or a Cutter.